have approval of agenda for the June 24th, 2019 meeting.
Well, that's the minutes. Do you want to do the agenda first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Approval of today's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. And then the June 24th approval of minutes.
Move to accept as presented. Approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fifth here is matter of public hearing for the amendments to the zoning ordinance for accessory structures set aside for sections 40-40.03, R1A through R1E, one-family districts, 40-44.04, RT, one and two-family attached. Can you walk us through that, Hank?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically what happened here is that, as you know, we just recently redid the zoning ordinance, and sometimes things get lost in the codification process. This is one of the things that was never intended to be changed. The Planning Commission always intended there to be set-asides for garage so that you wouldn't run up against somebody maxing out the house at 30% and then saying, aha, well, now I need a garage and you have to give it to me. So this way we would do the garage set-aside, and this was simply, the language was there, but the chart and everything was not. So what we'd like to do is, in order to do this, I already advertised this. This is, in fact, the public hearing for this matter. This is more or less simple housekeeping for that. You received a member from our planning consultant, Ben Carlisle, on this matter. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Okay. So no action needed for us?
Well, the action is needed. You have to move to accept the change, to accept this. You take public participation on it.
Okay.
And you can go from there.
All right.
But you definitely want to take public participation, and then a vote will be required.
Okay, got it. Open up for public participation? Anyone?
I'd be curious if you could just explain that a bit further, Hank. I understand the 30% rule, but I didn't follow
Yeah, the 30% rule is that you can't cover over 30% of your lot coverage. So what happens is that when you have a house and you're building it, or you have a house and you're remodeling it, you have a percentage of lot coverage that in Huntington Woods in the master plan we require space set aside for a garage. So in other words, when you have a house that covers, like in a 50 by 125 lot, you can cover 1,850 square feet of ground space with that, which is equivalent to the 30%. So out of that, there is a garage that was always a mandatory set aside. So for example, in one zone district, it may be 400 square feet. So out of the 1,875 square feet on the 50 by 125 lot, you could cover the garage with 1,475 square feet, because the garage, if there was none, would have had a space set aside so that you could always build a garage and never exceed your 30% lot coverage. That was the philosophy and the thought behind it. It's been in the zoning ordinance for years, and what it does is it protects against people's houses that have grown. Otherwise, everybody would max the house out to 30%. And then need a garage. Well, a garage is a reasonable and prudent use of property in Michigan, so the Zoning Board of Appeals would be likely to perhaps grant that. So, not that there's anything wrong with that, but then all of a sudden the lot coverage changes. So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay.
So Hank, I've got another question then.
Can you just give a name and address, please, for us?
Chris Umland, 10764 LaSalle Boulevard. So based on what you just described, then does that mean that someone who lives on a larger lot could theoretically have a larger garage with the 30% rule?
You can always have a larger garage. What you can't have is you can't have, let's say your house is maxed out and you want to have a garage that's going to be substantially larger. You can have up to a 650 square foot garage on your property, which is fine, provided that you don't exceed the 30%. Larger lots, like those lots in the acre subdivision or a double lot, like some people would have, are going to have less of a hard time doing that. But this ensures that the property, no matter what size that it is, has a garage, the capability of a garage on their property.
We're not changing the ordinance itself. We're just fixing a clerical error that when it was
That's
updated,
correct.
this table got deleted.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other public participation?
So Kevin Woodward, 260
participation is closed. Any discussion from the commission? All right, so looking for a motion?
That is correct.
I move to add the table back into the zoning ordinance.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, site plan review for proposed addition at the Grant residence at 26345 Humber.
Good evening. I'm Paul Grant, the owner of the property. Just going to brief introduction to the project. I've been a fairly long time resident of Huntington Woods. Purchased this property this past winter. And if you have, I don't know if your documents include a photograph of the existing structure. It was a house that was built probably in the 40s and added to in the 90s. It was very poorly done, and it's really lost any of its architectural style, so to speak. So the intent is to add some architectural features to the house, and to get it, to bring it in line with the streetscape, and to provide a more traditional neighborhood home with a porch, which is the primary feature that we're adding. Changing the windows and changing the gable, which is currently a curved gable. Okay?
Thank you. Hank, anything to add?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. Basically, there's a couple things that I wanted to let you know. This project, by virtue of what it needed, has already gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and a variance has been granted for the property subject to Planning Commission approval. Now, it should be noted that the Planning Commission is not considering the garage, even though that was on the plan, because they don't need Planning Commission approval for garage. And the porch, the space, they wouldn't need, normally, porches don't go to the Planning Commission. However, I sent this to the Planning Commission because you had the box bay that was going up, and you had the eyebrow window, or the eyebrow at the top of it, which was inconsistent with this typical architecture, and Mr. Grant wanted to change the front facade of the house. So because the roof line is changing, that's why it's here in front of you. So basically what Mr. Grant is doing is he's keeping the box bay, he's removing the eyebrow window, which was the feature at the top of it, and he's adding a reverse gable that comes out from the roof line, which typically would be more consistent with that type of architecture. The porch in and of itself covers between that, so he's got a variance of 2.5% lot coverage. This is one of the reasons why that came to the attention when reviewing this, of all this, because you're looking for that chart. Where's the chart? So this house was built long before Mr. Grant got there. In fact, Mr. Grant just purchased the house. Have you been there a year, 2 years?
No, this
Not
is
even.
this possible.
Yeah, so he just got the house, and then there was no space for anything. So the Zoning Board of Appeals ruled exactly like you just, he said, put the chart back in there. So they wanted to make sure that that was okay, so this didn't happen. This is just one that fell through the cracks. At some point in time, this house was built and covered more space. This is not anything that Mr. Grant has a fault of. This is what he inherited from the house when he purchased it. So the Zoning Board of Appeal has already ruled on that. So what you're really looking at tonight is the facade change as far as the gable and the box bay.
Just out of curiosity, how did it hit the ZBA before us? Isn't that typically backwards?
Typically, it's backwards, except for because the garage would not come before the Planning Commission anyway, and the porch would not typically come before the Planning Commission anyway. Those were the two items that put it over the lot coverage.
Okay.
So as a result, they didn't need to come here first. They needed to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because if he wasn't changing the box bay, it wouldn't come here at all.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, thank you. Open up for public participation? Hearing none, we'll close it. And we can kind of go around. Kim?
I think it's a simple and appropriate improvement to the home.
Thanks.
I have no issues with it. I think the gable is more appropriate than the eyebrow window, so not a problem. The porch is 5 feet deep. Is that what you're adding?
Yes.
Which is not a lot. Is that? This is a strange question for me to ask since I'm about keeping on the lot coverage.
I know
But
where you're going.
is that deep enough to make it a useful porch? It's just a question.
I believe so.
Okay.
It's,
Because 5 feet. I mean, I'm thinking I'm like just over 5 feet. Can you fit chairs on it? Or are you going to
you can
sit
fit
out on the porch
chairs, I don't think you can
without
fit,
falling off?
Yeah, you just can't fit lounges, and but
Sure.
really I don't think that's really what a porch is for, so I think 5 foot is appropriate.
Okay. So you're not looking for a place to hang out and
No, I don't think it's a hangout.
not a hangout porch. Not deep enough for a hangout porch. Okay. No, I think it's
I
fine.
don't think there'll be any used furniture. You know, any used couches.
No, I hope not. That wasn't where I was going. It was more that a lot of times people in Huntington Woods tend to like to live outside their houses as opposed to inside their houses.
Sure.
So I was
Well,
just
and
curious. And and sometimes when you look at some of the newer construction that's going in and the porches that they're putting on, they are so narrow that it looks almost disproportionate to the house. And I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure you
Fair
felt
comment.
it had the right proportions to add the facade that you wanted. That's why I asked.
Okay. Thank you. Good comment.
I don't have any issues.
Simple plan change, I don't have any issues with it either.
I agree. I think the gable's much better than an eyebrow would be. Looks great. That said, do we have a motion?
I move to accept as presented. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr.
Congratulations.
Would you like your plans back?
Sure. He knows
They
already.
did.
Themselves
So
today.
you might as well enjoy them.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll go find paper the walls.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You certainly may.
Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, the last item on the agenda, other than public participation, is the communication. What we're asking for you to do at this point in time is to receive the lane reduction memos and study for Coolidge Highway and 11 Mile Road. There will be future presentations which will discuss those, but at this point in time, we just want to formally make sure that the Planning Commission has them. And so the motion would be simply to accept that, and that's all you have to do.
Okay. No need for public participation on that?
You can have public participation on it, but it's simply a communication. It doesn't,
Okay.
there's nothing to, the public participation, even though I would suggest that you ask for it, would be more appropriate when we have a presentation, because
Okay.
it's just a communication.
Anybody have any questions that we can't answer yet? All right, open and closed. Any discussion from the commission?
I mean, I'll just say that we referred this here at our last city commission meeting. We also referred it to public safety and other Department of Public Works and some other departments to look at. I have some serious concerns already with the road diet on Coolidge and Berkeley and how it's set up. Basically forces you to merge in an intersection because the second lane disappears the minute you cross over 11 Mile Road. So there's some serious design flaws with the way. And we've talked to our public safety director. We've had numerous accidents we've had to respond to as a result of this. And so we want this looked at, for Coolidge and 11 Mile. There's also a component that if we were to move forward, there's a component about water retention and like using bioswales or rain gardens to try to retain water outside of the roadway, I guess, between the bike path and what would be the curb. So we're going to maybe have a presentation from the city, maybe the folks who put this report together, but we also want information for the Planning Commission to receive and eventually pass on from our department heads, because the traffic backs up considerably on Coolidge, south of 11 Mile, as a result of what's occurred in Berkeley. So the question is, if we go on a road diet, and Oak Park goes on the road diet, where does that traffic go? So we want to possibly engage the TIA, the Traffic Study Group, to give us something on traffic numbers and how they'd be impacted by a road diet on Coolidge or 11 Mile. So there'll be a lot to look at, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree to talk to Amy about it a bit, and 11 Mile doesn't scare me nearly as much as Coolidge because all that traffic coming off the freeway, like you said, it's just going to bottleneck. I feel like, but so I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
One of the things, too, that we hope to get an answer for, and perhaps when public safety addresses it, we will, It was my understanding that you get a ticket if you change lanes in an intersection.
You do.
Yeah, it's not permitted.
You know, that's another thing that we have to address, because the way that it's laid out now, you don't really have that chance. If you get caught in the right lane on 11 Mile on our side, which is now a turn lane, and all of a sudden you say, no, I gotta go straight, and you go straight, oops, can't do that, and have to get in the left lane, that's typically a ticket.
Okay.
Well, the other concern is the fact that so many people don't realize that center turn lane is a turn lane, not a merge lane.
Right.
You are not supposed to turn left into that center lane and then merge over. It is strictly a turn lane. So that's something that's happening more and more. And then with the road diet on Coolidge, so many people are now cutting through the neighborhoods. And that makes me nervous too.
Well, and again, we will have more information for this. Temporarily, or at least at this point, we believe that we have a report coming in September on this. I'm not sure what, if anything, we'll have for the August meeting, but as the information comes, we'll give it forwarded to you, and at some point in time, there will be a public hearing on this matter, so whether the Planning Commission holds it or whether the City Commission holds it remains to be seen, but we'll definitely want public input on this. I know Commissioner Rozelle is dead set on public participation, so.
Agreed.
We
Okay.
will make sure that there is some.
And I agree with you. I think 11 miles scares me a heck of a lot less than Coolidge.
11 Mile,
Lots of
back in the
questions.
day when we were putting this together, there was a big component that wanted to do it right then, where they wanted to have a center turn lane, wanted to have one lane each way with bike lanes on that. Would have been great to do it at that point in time, however, that didn't happen.
We voted for it, but Berkeley
Yeah,
didn't.
right.
That was the issue.
Yeah, so, having said that, now Berkeley is very interested.
Imagine
in
that.
doing it.
Right.
And at a bare minimum, there's different ways to do the road diet, set it up. You can have islands forcing turn lanes and forcing that so that you don't have people using the center lane to travel, to turn for left turns. But the anticipation of it bringing the speed down on 11 Mile was what we were looking at back in the day when we were doing it, when we were originally doing it. And that would also help to increase the property values on our 11 Mile property.
Absolutely.
By the slowing it down. So that's really what we have right now. So, you know, just receive that, and then we'll go from there, and we'll be funneling more information to the Planning Commission as we get it.
Great. All right, with that said, looking for a motion to accept the communication.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, open up for public participation for general comments.
You guys, I was just gonna make a comment again. Chris Almond, 10764 LaSalle. I can imagine trying to merge into one lane coming out Woodward. And what that would do at the Michigan left and then coming down, where would all that traffic go if we were merging on the same lane?
You're saying on to 11?
Onto 11 from Woodward. You guys are saying you're kind of worried at Coolidge.
Yeah.
What Berkeley's done, can you imagine if we did that coming to 11 Mile, you got 2 lanes in Royal Oak coming over.
Right.
What's, you know, because it's actually 3 lanes, because one turns right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Now you're trying to merge into one lane
Well,
from.
I think, again, depending on how this goes, and this is far from set in stone at this point in time, what would be happening on this side, even though it's on the Berkeley side, I'm fairly certain that our representation at that level would say that you need to have your merge into our section, not merge at the intersection, but maybe that right lane merges into the one lane 200-300 feet down the road. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that there's not a turn right, oh, what do I do now type of thing. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing on 11 Mile and Coolidge. And again, the thought process behind any road diet is to bring down the level of traffic, bring down the amount of traffic, and reduce the speeds.
But it's got to go somewhere.
Well, it does, and part of the thing is that with that, they would like to have more, when you do that type of thing, you want to have it on roads that are bigger, that are designed to handle it. So like the service drive would be, rather than 11 Mile, would be a method of travel that they might use. I don't know that there's going to be any increase from traffic onto Lincoln because of it, because not many people, you but it's possible. I mean, these are all things that are legitimate questions that should be answered. So with that in mind, that's the intent, is to answer all the questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, guess motion to adjourn? I think we did that. That was it.
Okay, that was it.
Move to adjourn.
Unless anybody else.
Yes, sir.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
See you next month.
You're continuing on.